thought into going further, but yeah, I didn't get to see him after the baby was born. But during the pregnancy, yeah, he was having issues with his own with recovery, sobriety, and he thought the woman set him up, and you know, it was he had a different narrative. He wasn't as gung ho about being a dad. Like I said, the one guy who he wanted to be there with his child, and they had broke up. He was still trying to spend time and wanted to go to the doctor's visits, but that relationship was in limbo, and we had no idea of how much longer he's going to be vested in that. I hope he's going to continue to be vested in his child's well-being. Right. But we know that, like I said, a lot of research shows that if he's not romantically involved with the woman, he gets a new girlfriend or wife, you know, often there's these pressures that get put on him, you know, or he makes the choice himself and not to be as active in the life of the child because he's no longer romantically involved. So yeah, there was a small minority that talk about that, but the men overwhelmingly, you know, I'd say like 95% or so were saying they were looking forward to being a father. But the biggest thing was their employment status would cause some of the men to report depression. You know, the levels of depression because it was a bit overwhelming. Not like one guy, you know, example of that. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. He said his response was, "It makes me feel like I'm supposed to have a child, but disappointed that I don't have the money to give him everything he's supposed to have." You know, and so it was that feeling like I'm not pulling my weight. You know, some men expressed that and anxiety over that, but they tended to be all right with and expecting to be fathers. They didn't say I don't want to be dads, except that one guy said I was set up or whatever. They tend to be a little bit more on board.
Well, yeah, I mean that would be my follow-up question.
Yeah.
I mean, if you say 95%, it expressed intent.
Yeah, intent. We don't know.
I mean, how many out of this 95%?
Sure, we don't
how
know.
many actually have the means?
To carry out? Right. Well, how many? That's a good question, Mark. I'll say easily about 2/3 or 70% of the sample was employed. But other people employed, maybe half of that sample was what was considered like really gainfully employed, right? And so the other guys were more on the margins. So they were working and they were doing what they can for their children, but they were very much on the economic margins. So that was going to definitely put, you can imagine, some strain on that whole relationship. Right. So as I said, you got to look at their issue of globalization, and that has direct impact on their sometimes ability to actually honor all of those commitments as they try to, you know, to make good on. Yeah, you can't get away from globalization, deindustrialization, in our educational system with, like you said, the life chances and outcomes with these families, these fragile families. You know, that's a good question. Yeah.
One more. The 3 P's were provider, protector, and what else?
And procreator, making babies. And father. Yeah.
So for the people that make references to their own fathers and
yes.
resisting,
right.
You know, whatever that frame of reference was, I mean, what was the socio, or do you know the socioeconomic status of their fathers? Like, were they at liberty to carry out?
I think you got a good point there. I think some of them were sort of on the margins too. If they were working, it was blue collar often. It was low skill, but yeah, some of them didn't know their fathers very well. Had very little knowledge of their dads, and I don't know what their fathers did. We don't know, but yeah, that could have been a factor for why the fathers. I mean, but still, like I said, it was that whole idea of your dad's alive and he's not having any active role in your life. Whatever's going on with him economically or not, you know, you as a person, you know, you have, you know, it promotes almost, you know, universal a sense of anger in young men. They have issues with dad is alive, but he's abandoned me. He's walked out. He's washed his hands of me. And even as they say, I'm unfazed by it, the anger, it's issues that are there, you know. And for some men to be transformed into one to be, I'm going to turn the energy into being there for my kid, I thought that was a sort of a turning point for some of these men in their lives.
Right, because, you know, when you were talking about that, I mean, part of that kind of, you know, Carol Stack's work, where she's talking about the structural disenfranchisement of, but, I mean, you remove socioeconomic status from this particular study, right? I mean, they're not particularly just urban, poor black males.
It goes across class.
Right.
So, and I don't have an SBS, the demographics in front of you, but yeah, it went across classes. Sure, you're right. Some were middle class, some were, you know, working class. Like I said, there was the men who had a father figure in their life, somebody in their life. Those guys were much better adjusted than guys who never, Dad walked out and there was nobody else that came in and played that role. Those men had a lot harder, were having issues with substance abuse, more have substance abuse issues, and more marginalized to employment. If Granddaddy had a work ethic that he was able to translate and give them, and a certain ethics of care that he showed him by being there for him, that person was much better off than the person who had no father figure whatsoever as well.
Right.
Well, I think we're going to have to stop now. We've run over, and we'd like to thank Dr. Willis for the stimulating talk, and thank you for your questions and for coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
We appreciate you.